Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hospital Marketing Podcast. I am your host, Patrick Bender, along with the CEO of DTC Perspectives, Scott Ehrlich. On this podcast, we will be hearing from leaders in the hospital marketing space about what makes a great campaign, how you can define success, and where hospital marketing is headed. We have some great guests in this edition of the Hospital Marketing National Podcast, including Lisa Henry, the Director of Corporate Marketing and Communications from Mary Washington Healthcare, Ken Robbins, the CEO and founder of ResponseMind Interactive, and Phil Chrzanowski, the principal of Chrzanowski Design. To start things off, Scott had the chance to speak with Lisa Henry from Mary Washington Healthcare.
I'm here with Lisa Henry, the Director of Corporate Marketing and Communications at Mary Washington Hospital. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you for the invitation, Scott.
Lisa, how do you come up with great creative in your marketing?
I would say, Scott, that it is a blend of art and science. It's very important to be thinking about the science of the creative before you start getting too far down the path. So we open with a really good idea of what our goals are.
Sure.
We think about what are we trying to achieve, all of the evergreens, the things that must be in there, and we end it with the metrics. How is it performing? And in between, you can do the brainstorming and come up with a really amazing kind of unique ways that you can tell that story within the slight box that you created around it.
Great. Well, I know you mentioned you're in really competitive spaces in the Richmond area, the D.C. area, not just in healthcare, but also just in terms of just general information being put out there. How do you break through that clutter and get it to where your advertising really is able to resonate and gain some saliency with your potential consumers?
Yeah, I think that's everybody's concern, not just in a highly competitive market. I think advertising, a lot of our consumers really are bombarded with advertising.
Sure.
So you need to break through beyond just healthcare, as you mentioned. And so for us, it's really about testing. We test our advertising before, during, and after campaigns to make sure that they're working. We put a lot of metrics behind them. But mostly, we want to know how our consumers feel about it emotionally. So we do emotional testing as well. And so, we've made the mistake before of coming up with some really amazing creative, a lot of energy put into it, a lot of excitement internally. We put the ad campaign out and it didn't work. And we went back and thought about it, retested, and recognized that it just didn't work for people because it was so far removed from our brand and what they knew of us. And so it was kind of a wake-up call. Like, don't skip that step. Measurement and testing was really an important part of it.
Well, go on. What does metrics then do you use for measurement and testing to really decide that that's what people want? And what is it about your brand that people know you for to make sure that your advertising fits in with their vision?
Well, that's two questions there.
Yes.
So let me start with what our metrics are. In the beginning, we do a lot of testing. We do a lot of online testing and focus group style testing. And we do a lot of the question style facilitated type of things of, what appeals to you about this? Can you recognize, look at this ad, you take it away, and do you recognize who the brand is? Look at the ad, take it away, and say, can you tell me what the primary message point is of this ad. So there's some of those fundamentals. But then we also do emotional heat mapping. So they're actually clicking on the ad and recognizing emotion to where their eyes are going on the ad. So it's not quite neurological testing that
Sure.
some big brands do, where they're literally doing an MRI and can see where their eye movements are. But it's close. It's about as close as maybe a healthcare organization of our size can get. But it's very telling. It's very telling to us are they even looking at the image on it? Are they looking at our logo? Are they even emotionally connecting with the message of the story in the ad? So really, that is one way that we're doing it. On the back end of metrics, of course, we have downstream revenue, call to actions, how many people are connecting on our website, how many people then are doing something on our website, how many people are calling maybe a unique phone number or maybe getting in touch with our call center for something or scheduling appointments. So it's going to vary by what we're trying to do with that advertisement. But then we also measure preference, awareness, brand loyalty, all sorts of metrics on ongoing that aren't directly connected to one specific campaign, but we have recognized that moves quite a bit when we're in market or out of market for any period of time.
Very interesting. Going back to what you said there, obviously you're limited by your size of your hospital and obviously the budget that accompanies the size of that hospital. Where do you try to focus your budget to maximize your effectiveness in advertising? Is there any certain advertising style, or is there any medium you find gets you more bang for your buck than maybe some other ones?
Sure. Number one is new to healthcare, relatively new to healthcare. I can't say it's new in the last year. It's not that innovative. But using modeling, predictive modeling, is kind of a big deal right now in healthcare. And that allows us to target so well to get the right message to the right audience, test it even in small groups and an audience, and then broaden that audience. It has so much flexibility, and knowing that you're sending the right message in the way that that person wants to see it for a higher response rate than if you just blanketed the market has been incredibly rewarding.
Is there
it's a hard sell sometimes.
Is there a specific example of a way that you've done that you could share with us?
Sure. We have done it with a lot of our key service lines, cardiac, for instance, cancer, women's and children's babies, people thinking about having babies, where we will target them either through direct mail, email, web or social media, or all of the above. And so what will happen is we'll pull out, okay, these are the top 10% of people most likely seeking care in a certain area and certain service in the next 12 months. And we're going to target them with very specific messaging with a call to action. It might be a screening. It might be a sign up for a kit on how to stay healthy or keep your diabetes under control or your cholesterol under control or something along those lines. And then start connecting with them more meaningfully once they engage with our healthcare system and become part of our network. And so we've done that with many service lines and have a tremendous response. We get more people attending workshops or Facebook Live events by targeting them than if we just market that through the newspaper or on the radio or on the web.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. Traditional advertising for our market, web is still the best. We do not have local television. And we do have radio and one paper. So because we're between Richmond and Washington, D.C., it would not make sense for us to spend our money to be on the television in D.C.
Sure.
or in the television in Richmond or on their radio stations. But there's so many that can geo-segment now, even the radio stations through their streaming or even with online advertising, that we're able to really target our money very carefully to make sure. And it's the kind of targeting that you don't need to buy advertising for 6 months. You can buy it for 10 days and see what happens and then adjust. It's amazing. Google AdWords is another area where you can do that, or Facebook. You can be so specific about how much money you want to spend, how many people you want to reach, and have a very specific call to action that you can tweak and see what's really working before you spend more of your money.
You've kind of delved into my final question for you pretty well, which is talking about a lot of the recent changes, technological changes, new technologies, and new ways to micro-target that you're taking advantage of, things that I'm sure you weren't doing maybe 5 years ago, certainly not 10 years ago. So how do you see that evolving over the next 5 to 10 years? How do you see what your campaigns may look like and what your campaign strategy may look like, say, in 2025, based on kind of where it is now and where it's going?
Yeah, the hyper-targeting is really where a lot of things are evolving. I don't think, everybody's talking about it, but I don't know that all the hospitals in the country are doing this yet. So I don't think that predictive modeling has climaxed and we're moving into artificial intelligence. But some organizations really are going into artificial intelligence and data mining in a way that's amazing. So I really think that collision of consumerism and big data in healthcare is going to change how we model our strategies.
How does that work in healthcare versus certain other products? Because again, there's certain other products you can do and try to create that demand by marketing, individual targeting, knowing that. But obviously in healthcare, you're not trying to create demand. I mean, in some way, but you're not the demand for heart surgery or cancer treatment doesn't exist if the person's not subject to those things. So how does that individual modeling and individual targeting work in a certain area like this that's very reactive instead of proactive in terms of creating those consumers? And I'm just curious to get your thoughts on that since you've talked so much about that.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it is something we're all still trying to figure out the best way to tackle that. There's still the big brother factor that worries everyone in our field and worries some consumers. How do they know? You know, if I am sending them something that says, go get a colonoscopy for colon cancer screening, they're like, what are you not telling me? Because you're healthcare. You know, what do you know? And it's a little fearful. And as more industries, retail in particular, a lot of retail organizations of all different levels, even business to business, not just business to consumer, are getting into profiling and artificial intelligence and data mining through social media. You know, it's becoming an expectation. Big Brother doesn't scare people as much as it used to a decade ago. You know, they expect you to know enough about them to give them a meaningful experience when they interact. So a lot of what this is of the consumerism and big data colliding is more about a relationship and less about driving a specific business. So what I see it becoming, and I might be way off, but what I see it becoming really is more of that. It's that lifetime relationship with a consumer where they enter and exit into your sphere as life demands it, but you're always a part of them. You're always a part of their relationship in the community in many different ways. Some hospital systems are really getting that now, early, understanding in innovative ways to remain connected through the lifespan of a consumer and in a meaningful way. And I really think that's more of what it is. Everything we've done historically, that hasn't changed. It's preference, it's awareness. Pick us when the time comes. There are some pieces of our industry that are demand-based. You know, we are, bariatric surgery, retail medicine, urgent care. We're trying to bring you in. We're trying to get you in for different things. So there's a total half of our business is retail medicine, the other half being that inpatient experience or emergency experience that you cannot predict. So having that relationship where you are their go-to for their needs from wellness to acute care, to incidental care, it is really the end goal.
Lisa, thank you. Very interesting stuff. Really appreciate that.
Next, I had the chance to catch up with Ken Robbins from Response Mind Interactive. Let's see what Ken had to say. I'm joined by Ken Robbins, CEO and founder of Response Mind Interactive, based here in Atlanta, right, Ken?
Yes, that's right.
Great. And actually, Ken was a speaker at our Hospital Marketing National Conference this past June. Some great stuff coming out of RMI. Ken, why don't you go ahead and just explain to us what Response Mind does?
Response Mind is a digital direct marketing agency focused in the health and wellness space. We've got about 90 employees. We have a HIPAA-compliant call center in our offices to test and launch campaigns for clients. And for hospitals and medical practices, mainly we're hired to do a lot of patient acquisition marketing. Great.
So why don't you go ahead and will you give me an example of what you guys have done with a healthcare system, a hospital, for them to better reach their consumers?
Well, no clients really come to us to do branding work or things like that, or TV or PR. They come to us because they usually have a math problem, and that math problem is their costs are too high to acquire a patient, maybe in a particular service line or procedure or specialty, and it's not growing because of that. So one of our clients was a large player in orthopedics and particularly in back surgery, and this client came to us with a very good understanding of their metrics. That's what we love. And if the client doesn't know their metrics, a lot of times our beginning engagement will be to help discover those.
Right.
So what their conversion rates are, what their cost per calls are. And for this client, they knew very specifically that they needed to get their marketing cost per surgery down from about $7,000 per back surgery down to $4,500. And within 6 months of working with them, we were able to achieve that goal by optimizing the media that they worked on and helping them work on their landing pages and improve their conversion throughput into their patient care coordinator center.
Oh, that's great. So basically, you guys are using metrics to help these physicians, hospitals, healthcare providers better their ROI, correct?
Yes, yes. Here at Response Plan, there's more people that count things than there are that draw and write things. Although we have plenty of both, but it's a very metrics-based decision-making matrix. So, and it's never sufficient, and we won't take on a client who only wants us just to get them more traffic. We have to be driving towards some deep business objective within a client, because we know if we're not doing that, then it's not going to be a long-term engagement.
Right.
We want them to tell us, we're trying to grow this service line. We're trying to go bariatrics from 5,000 patients a year to 25,000 patients annually. And if the markets they're in support that, then we take the challenge on. It's our job to help them go find that patient volume.
Okay. So speaking on those metrics, what types of metrics do you guys use to define a successful ad or campaign?
Well, the very first thing that we have to know is Mr. or Mrs. Client, estimate for us what you think the marketing allowable should be. So that's the first metric, because that's going to drive everything else.
Okay.
From there, we'll go back and we'll model. And I was up in St. Louis yesterday pitching a healthcare client, and we just basically modeled all of their markets, their major markets for them. What we thought the amount of demand was based upon search volume, for example, because search volume is a great proxy for how much demand is in the market, what the populations of those markets are, and then we estimated based upon the cost per click, the number of searches that are being conducted, et cetera. We think we're going to be able to deliver something around $120 cost per lead into the call center. If we assume a certain conversion rate in the call center of, say, 8% to procedure, now we can calculate a cost per new patient coming into their ecosystem. So it starts with what's the allowable for a new patient or that type of procedure. And usually that's an estimate, because not everybody has a hard and fast figure. I mean, if it's an oncology client, there's a different revenue potential in helping someone of one type of cancer at one stage versus another. So we start with that estimate, then we go back and we model what does our cost per lead and our cost per inbound call and our cost per new patient consult need to be.
Great. Okay, so I'm fascinated by this type of stuff. So when you say allowable, will you explain that to me?
Absolutely. I talk about this in my Monday morning meetings, and when we have new employees arrive, I just right off the bat say the only reason we exist is to drive new revenues and new growth for our clients.
Right.
That is the only reason we charge a fee. So the purpose of marketing should be to drive new profits and new customers.
Right.
So in terms of an allowable, that the client sets the allowable, but it's always well below whatever their revenues are. So let's say an average procedure for a dentist, for example, I'm just going to pick something easy.
Okay.
For a dental implant is $10,000. So they know what their profit margins are and what their overhead is, et cetera, and they may consider that generally we've got $6,000 of profit in a single implant event, or gross profit in a single implant event. Well, then they may say, we're willing to spend $2,000 in total marketing to get that $6,000 of margin, giving them a $4,000 net profit.
Gotcha.
So now we know we have $2,000 for every new patient to work with, and after 3 or 4 months of the program, we need to validate that the revenues from the patients we're driving through marketing match that. So that allowable is $2,000. If the procedure is only $600, the allowable may be to get a new patient in.
Okay.
And when we're trying to model these out, Patrick, it really gets interesting, and it requires a lot of business thinking when we think about something like primary care physicians. I love it when a hospital wants to go after primary care physicians, because that's really the apex service line that eventually leads to a lot of lifetime value. Because if they already have that relationship with in the early stages as their PCP, later on they're going to be able to refer them into their other subspecialties and get a lot of, and help that patient throughout their lifetime, serve them throughout their lifetime, put them in a state of health, but also make the revenue from them.
And give them the best treatment possible, right?
Yes, yeah. So in that case, we may say, a client may say, I am in the first PCP engagement of the first year, I may only have $1,500 in revenue from this patient, but I have a $1,500 allowable because I know I'm starting a lifetime relationship with them.
Man, that's some great stuff. It really sounds like Response Mind Interactive is doing some great things on the digital end. And you guys seem to be in the forefront of where things are shifting in terms of marketing in hospitals. Where do you see hospitals having to market themselves here in a few years, in the year, let's say 2030?
Wow, the year 2030, that's a couple of decades out. That's definitely going to be driven by what the payer universe looks like. And as we know, there's just a lot of tectonic shifts in that. So, if it's a single payer dominant universe, it's going to be totally different. There'll be a lot less hospital marketing in that case, probably. But I don't think that's going to happen here in the U.S. I think we're going to have mostly a private pay ecosystem going forward, and possibly some hybrid. And that does mean that there will be a lot of marketing. The trend of health consumerism is blowing out multiple industries in healthcare, everything from pharma all the way down.
Oh, it is.
And there's 9 sub-trends under that. And I think what's definitely going to have to happen in the very near future, in the next few years, is pricing transparency. Because consumers demand this. If you've got high deductible plans, you hate it when you don't know what the procedure is, what the procedure costs, and you hate it. It's a different price depending upon whether or not you have Humana or your self-pay or you've got Blue Cross Blue Shield. It's objectionable.
Right.
And I think the pricing transparency is going to have to come forward. Pricing parity is going to have to come forward. And that'll become a component of the marketing. The second thing that's going to happen, especially in the world of the adoption and transformation into accountable care organizations, is efficacy and success inside of hospitals is going to have to be exposed. I'm going to want to know, it's going to move away from, our doctors have all these accolades and we're an NCI designated cancer center, to we have a 98% success rate with these types of procedures.
I mean, people want to know exactly what they're getting themselves into,
Yes. This success rate and customer experience and pricing are all becoming transparent in everything from taxi rides with Uber to restaurants with Yelp, and the consumer universe will demand it for healthcare and health procedures.
Right.
So marketing is going to have to serve that.
For sure. And once again, Ken Robbins, Response Mind Interactive, CEO and founder. Ken, I really appreciate you taking time to join us today. You can check out Ken's business at www.responsemind.com. They're doing some great work here in the industry. And Ken, I really appreciate you taking the time to join me today.
Patrick, thank you very much.
Awesome. To wrap things up, Scott had a chance to speak with Phil Chrzanowski of Chrzanowski Design.
Hi, I'm here with Phil Chrzanowski, the principal of Chrzanowski Design. Phil, how you doing today?
Doing great, Scott. Thanks.
Phil, when you're doing your marketing, how do you come up with great creative?
Well, I would say that, first of all, I try to go into every project, with the right attitude. And, that is really every project, has the potential to be great. And no matter how confining the parameters may seem, it's really up to us creatives to kind of work with what we've been given and come up with something extraordinary. And it kind of reminds me of that famous Michelangelo quote about every stone having a statue inside. And after that, it's doing some research, and ideally the client would provide a brief, and always trying to gather as much information about the project as possible. Formal questionnaires are great, but a lot of clients just won't take the time to fill those out. So for me, what really works best is just send an email, kind of a brief email with the most pertinent questions. And then after that, I try to do some research on the client's website and their social media sites, and see what other nuggets that I can kind of uncover from that. But beyond that, if there's any secret sauce, I would say it's just coming up with a lot of ideas, just going crazy, experimenting, a lot of trial and error. And for me, I find it's really important, not to get hung up on those first couple of ideas. It's real easy to fall in love with a concept early on in the process, but I try to really push to develop a lot of different ideas, and then if it's possible, let it sit overnight and come back. And I read somewhere that the supposedly subconscious continues to work on a problem kind of when you're away from it or sleeping. And I'm not sure if that's really true or not, or if it's just a matter of coming back to it with fresh eyes. But I do find that makes a big difference. And then, come back and explore a lot of different variations on those. And, ideas that I thought maybe were great early on, when I look at them the next day, maybe they're not so great. Or you can kind of see which ones really have more potential.
So when you,
and then it's just, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, and then, once we present, try to be very open to, the client's input on our concept and strategy. Clients, they really know their audience, and they can really help improve a project.
When you are finally settling on an idea, obviously there's a lot of competition for people's attention nowadays. How do you come up with something that breaks through that clutter?
Well, to really break through, ideally it's something very unexpected, and that could be, a catchy headline, an unusual image, something to draw that viewer in. But of course, it needs to be appropriate to the message,
Sure.
or you'll lose them pretty quick. And then a strong concept is always the foundation of all that. But beyond that, if the design is clean and easy to read, and it's professionally designed, it has a good chance of breaking through. Just that is kind of unexpected, because most of what's out there is loud, and obnoxious, and busy.
Sure.
And then the details, we pay a lot of attention to details, like the typography is very important. And the most important part of that is really, to me, is creating a clear hierarchy of the information. And that can be done with, contrasting sizes and uses of bold and caps and italics and all that kind of stuff. But you don't want to overdo that either. And then we spend a lot of time kerning headlines, which is tweaking the space between the letters to make it look very professional. The software does a pretty good job nowadays, but we usually have to do some tweaking on that. And then we spend a lot of time searching for just the right photos if we're using stock photography. And then we'll often do, retouching and color correction to really tweak those images.
When you have finally done stuff and gotten your creative done, you've come up with the campaign, you're like, what sort of media do you try to direct your clients to use? Is there a certain media type that you find to provide more value or more bang for your buck or better results than others?
Well, in our case, a lot of the clients sort of kind of already have that in mind, what they want to do. And we've done a lot of direct mail, and we've had success with some of those that, have been very successful. But, really, I think it's, kind of hitting it from a lot of different angles. So I don't think any one particular channel is necessarily better than another.
So more of an integrated approach?
Absolutely.
So you said you had a lot of success with direct mail, for example. How do you define success? What sort of metrics do you use to say, okay, that was a good campaign, that was a bad campaign, other than just simply liking the creative?
Yeah, well, our clients really do that because we're more on we're the creative portion of it, and then they hopefully will measure whatever we do. So that's really done mostly on the client end for what we do, and that sometimes they'll provide us with that information, which is really helpful to kind of know what's working and what's not.
Can you provide maybe some specifics on a campaign that did work extremely well that you might be able to share?
Let me think. Like, we did a series for mammograms. It was a direct mail series, and the client really didn't have anything particular in mind, and we suggested, coming up with a series where they were testimonials basically, and one was for the, it came out at the beginning of the year. I think it mailed in like January, and it was the idea of, it's a new year, and sign up to get your mammogram, start off the year, with focusing on your health. And then we did one in the spring, which was kind of like doing it for your children's sake around Mother's Day.
Sure.
And we featured a mother and had photos with her kids, kind of thing. And then I think the last one was sent in the middle of the summertime, and it was targeted to women who had just turned 40. And so that was very successful. In fact, they told me that, like, compared to the previous year, it had gone up like, I think 240%.
Wow.
Their increase in mammograms they'd done. Yeah, so that was very successful.
So talking about some of this and looking at what you're doing now, I'm sure it's changed a lot in the last decade, how you approach marketing, approach creative, and I'm sure it'll change a lot more over the next decade. Where do you see marketing headed, hospital marketing headed over the next... sorry about that. Sorry, let me start it. Where do you see hospital marketing headed over the next decade?
Sure. Well, I think, the general strategies that are successful now, of course, will be the same in 2030, which is, the hospitals that do the research and truly understand their audience and then communicate with them in a personal and empathetic way are going to continue to be successful. But the technology is going to determine how all that plays out. And I think there's going to be a lot of options that become feasible, like artificial intelligence and augmented reality. And I think telemedicine and virtual doctor visits will be great places to reinforce the brand. And
How so?
Right now we're seeing...
How so? How do you think you go about doing something like that creatively, if you were looking at that on your end?
Say, which part? The telemedicine and all that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you would just, there would just be built-in messaging that would, somehow tie into that, whether it's, prior to the event or after the event, and the same with virtual doctor visits. Still a little early to know about, because technology could all play a part in that. So there may be other ways of doing that we don't know about yet. But, that would just be one. I mean, I don't see that as a huge advertising thing, but as more of a reinforcement for the brand. And then, I think, right now the hospitals that are doing, the digital and the social media are having an advantage, but I think by 2030, I think most of them are going to be fully engaged, and it's going to be more about who can break through. And then marketing automation, I think, will be a bigger deal. But I think the hospitals will have to find a balance between, the automation part of it and still maintaining sort of a human aspect to it. I think it will continue to get more personalized as marketers have more and more data available. And then the technology will bring the costs of personalization down. I do think print will still be relevant, Studies showed that people of all ages right now trust in print more than digital.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And they found that this is due to, a perceived commitment that it takes to put something in print, whereas, messages online are very fleeting.
Sure.
And we're now starting to see a hybrid of print and video, which I think is just in its infancy. You can now create a print brochure that has video embedded. And just yesterday, I attended a presentation about a new feature from the Postal Service. It's called Informed Delivery. And it merges print and digital, and I think it's going to be really huge for business-to-consumer marketers like hospitals. What it is, it allows consumers to sign up for this service, which delivers a daily email, and it shows scans of the addressing side of the mail piece, of all the mail pieces that are being processed at that time that are going to soon arrive in their mailbox. And it's free for the consumer to sign up, and then direct marketers who participate in the pilot program right now have the ability to display relevant digital content related to their scanned mail piece. It's going to appear in the email notifications.
So it's like enhanced direct mail in a way.
Say it again?
It's like an enhanced direct mail, I guess.
Kind of like that, yeah, exactly. It's basically, and so what they'll see is they'll see this grayscale image of, let's say, a direct mail piece or whatever coming through the mail, and below that, they can have a marketer can have a clickable, like a small little ad below that mail piece, which can link to a landing page or wherever you want it to go. And right now, it's free.
Phil, very interesting stuff. Really appreciate you taking the time with me today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much, Phil. Take care.
That wraps up our 4th edition of the Hospital Marketing National Podcast. I'd like to thank Lisa, Ken, and Phil for their time and their thoughts. We'd love your input on great hospital marketing as well. Please email me to participate in our show with your thoughts at patrick@dtcperspectives.com. And don't forget about our great event, the Hospital Marketing National Conference, taking place in Atlanta in early June 2018, where we have great speakers like these presenting their approaches to marketing, what works and what doesn't, case studies, marketing research, plus awards for some of the best hospital marketing campaigns and hospital marketers. You can get more info on that at www.hmnconference.com. For all of us at DTC Perspectives, thanks for listening to the Hospital Marketing National Podcast. For Scott Ehrlich, I'm Patrick Bender. Looking forward to having you listen to our next show with more great guests and great content. Thanks, and have a great rest of your day.